So if there's one word that we can use in college football, and if there's one word that we can use this year, it's parity. And, you know, you've heard me say that word probably a pretty good bit this year, maybe last year, on episodes on last year's season, whatever you want to call it. And parity's a topic that's very much a hot button issue in college football. The NIL transfer portal, everything has introduced a lot of parity into the sport. Case in point, like, really, you can't hardly predict anything anymore. A preseason top 25, a preseason top 10, preseason college football playoff picks. Those polls and those things now are just as opinion-based, really, as they've ever been. They're not really rooted in fact, because teams are changing so much every year, with this player going to this school, this player going to that school, and it just has created this seismic shift across the landscape of college football. It's opened up a fault line, just a crack in the middle, and all the things we thought that we knew have just fallen down into the hole. And we're just kind of in the wings here, playing it by ear, taking it as it comes. And that is the sport. That is the state of the sport today. You know, it's like the president has a State of the Union, then we have a state of the sport. We have a state of the sport of college football, and that's what it is today. Case in point, today I was just doing a little bit of digging in some downtime, you know, looking through some pictures, looking through some articles, reading. I do a lot of, reading a lot of articles about college football in my downtime, watching videos, listening to podcasts, and everything. And one thing that I did find, I stumbled across, and this is before the season started. So every team 0-0. Nobody's played yet or anything. This weekend, this particular week, the weekend of November 1st, was supposed to be an absolute barn burner slate. It was supposed to be amazing. And let me read through some of the contests that Week 10 was supposed to have originally based on preseason ranking. So you were going to have number 2 Penn State going on the road to Columbus to play number 3 Ohio State. You were going to have number 10 Miami going on the road to Dallas to play number 16 SMU. You were going to have number 11 Arizona State going on the road to play Iowa State, number 22. You were going to have number 13 South Carolina going on the road to play number 21 Ole Miss. You were going to have number 23 Texas Tech going on the road to play number 17 Kansas State. You were going to have number 18 Oklahoma going on the road to play number 24 Tennessee. And number 5 Georgia was going to play number 15 Florida in Jacksonville. That was this weekend's slate before the season started. And now you've got Penn State's unranked, SMU's unranked, Arizona State and Iowa State, we've seen how their seasons have transpired so far. South Carolina's unranked, Ole Miss in the top 10, Texas Tech in the top 10, Kansas State unranked, Oklahoma and Tennessee still ranked, and then Georgia is about where they were at preseason. They're at 6th, and we're at 5th. And then you have an unranked Florida team. Actually, Georgia's 5th. Excuse me. Georgia is still 5th. They were 5th preseason. They're 5th now. And Florida unranked. So if that isn't a picture, if you will, of the ever-changing landscape of the sport that we love, I don't know what is. Because before the season started, this was a weekend that I had on my calendar where I was like, I'm not going to be doing anything that weekend except being in front of a TV and watching college football all weekend long. Now we look at it and it's pretty underwhelming. I'm not going to lie. And there's still some great games, and we're going to get into them Thursday prediction show. So we'll get into them here in just a few minutes. But the slate is not what we thought it was going to be. But hey, got to produce content. We're going to make it happen. Welcome back, everybody, after the whistle. Don't know if I did my whole little spiel at the beginning of the show again. Just kind of jumped right into things. But welcome back to another episode of After the Whistle. I'm your host, Colby Allen. Wherever you're listening, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon. Also, shows available on YouTube now. Be sure to go on YouTube. And if you really want to help me out, I'm trying to get these metrics up. So if you really want to help me out, you're listening on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Now, right now, as I stated on the show earlier in the week, we do not have video. We do not have a video show right now. Those of you who follow the show understand a little bit of what's going on in my personal life, where last year we had a hurricane tear through our area and, almost took our whole house with it. And so we're rebuilding the house. We're in the process of rebuilding the house. It's almost done. So if you were wondering about that, I know I talked about it on last year's show a little bit. If you're wondering about that, the house is almost done. We will be back in. Once we get back into the house, get settled in, I have a designated room with soundproofing on the walls. I mean, it's going to be first class, guys. I'm going to have a video set up to where I can do a video show on YouTube. But don't fret, if you listen on Spotify, if you listen on Apple Podcasts, if you listen on Amazon, the show will still be available in an audio format. So don't worry about that. You'll still be able to listen to the show at your leisure, but there will be a video option as well. So if you want to just pop on over to YouTube, take a look at my pretty face, just kidding. But if you want to pop over there and watch me talk and everything else, and that will be available. I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, within the next month, we will be able to make that happen. That was ultimately the plan last year, and then Hurricane Helene had other ideas, so we weren't able to do it. But I'm hoping that we will be going to do that very, very soon, and I'm very excited to be able to bring y'all that kind of content. But like I said, you really want to help the show out, be sure to go on that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, give the video a like. On Spotify, if you're not already following the podcast on Spotify and you're not subscribed on Spotify, do that as well. Apple Podcasts, do that as well. Leave a rating, 5 stars preferably, but hey, if you want to give me 4 or 3, that's fine. If you give me a 2 or a 1, I'm going to hunt you down. So just to let you know, you've been forewarned on that. All right, so getting into a little bit of the news. So as most of you know, I record these shows. I release an episode on Monday and I release an episode on Thursday. I record on Sundays, most of the time in the afternoon. I have a 3-year-old, so it's normally during her nap time when the house is not very chaotic, and I'm able to get my mic set up very right where there's no background noise for y'all to listen to, because I'm pretty sure y'all don't want to hear a toddler in the background, or maybe you do. That's your thing. But I normally record on Sunday afternoon, and then I record, as I'm doing right now, on Wednesday night on a show that will be released on Thursday, October 30th. After I recorded on Sunday evening, the news that Brian Kelly had been fired in Baton Rouge broke. I released a short video on the Instagram page, on the podcast Instagram page, kind of giving my thoughts on the situation. And if you're not following me on Instagram, be sure to go on there at ATWCFB. That is the podcast handle on Instagram. Be sure to go on there and click that follow button if you aren't already, and I would also gladly appreciate that as well. So Brian Kelly is out at LSU, and the story goes that, of course, the loss to Texas A&M, which was an absolute woodshed beating, kind of was the driving factor in this, but also it's being reported that the athletic director and Brian Kelly had a little bit of a spat, if you will, after the game. They had a meeting on Sunday, and there was a meeting that, from what I'm hearing, and take this with a grain of salt, you know how the reporting is nowadays. It can be kind of splotchy at times, and you're not always getting the 100% full story. You're getting a lot of hearsay, so take this with a grain of salt. But Scott Woodward, the AD at LSU, and Brian Kelly got into it over making some changes. The original plan was not to fire Brian Kelly, but it was to make some changes at the coordinator, level on that football team. The rumor is that Brian Kelly refused to do so. The conversation got kind of heated, therefore ending the working relationship between Brian Kelly and Louisiana State University. Ultimately, I think the thing had run its course. And let's be honest, at LSU, when you have the track record that they have with coaches, whereas you look at a guy like Nick Saban, won a national championship. Les Miles won a national championship. Ed Ogeron won a national championship. You bring in a guy like Brian Kelly, who had a history of winning, and Brian Kelly's slander, as far as like his ability to coach a football team, is ill-advised and it's ignorant, because the guy wins. Now, the way that LSU wants you to win is different than other schools. Optics is everything based on what school you're coaching at. Obviously, if you're at LSU, you are expected to compete for an SEC championship at the bare minimum, and you're expected to compete, make the playoff, and compete for a national championship, because the last three coaches that preceded you did so. Brian Kelly fell short of that mark. And it's not so much that Brian Kelly was not winning, because this guy was still doing, 9 wins a year, had a 10-win season, and you stack those on top of each other, and as far as a winning percentage as over his career, Brian Kelly is like 40 win percentage, maybe a little bit more. I can't remember the exact number. I saw it earlier and completely slipped my mind. I should be in the ballpark there. But winning at that level is good enough for a lot of schools, but it's not good enough at LSU. And ultimately, they cut ties. I think it's the right move. I think you have to get somebody in there that embraces the culture, that almost fits in. I don't want to say that Brian Kelly didn't fit, because obviously that's subjective, because if Brian Kelly was winning, say Brian Kelly went to the playoff last year and made a deep run and got all the way to the championship game and lost to Ohio State in the national championship, I feel like whether or not he fit the culture of LSU would have mattered, because we live in a day and age where it's all about winning football games. It's all about winning the big game. And that's where Brian Kelly fell short, is in the big games against the ranked opponents, the top 10 opponents. That's where he kind of fell short. Now, you beat the teams you were supposed to beat, but you couldn't beat the teams that were like the toss-up games, the 50-50 ranked-on-ranked matchups, and the top 10 matchups. And let's be honest, when you get your butt kicked in Death Valley at night, that's not a good sign that your program is on the right track to be successful long-term. Because that's been a place historically that it didn't matter what LSU was doing at that point. It's been historically a very, very tough place to play. It didn't matter if LSU was unranked. It didn't matter if they were ranked 20th. It didn't matter if they had 3 or 4 losses. It was a very tough place to go in and win football games. Very passionate fan base there in Baton Rouge. If you've never been in that stadium, you don't understand. If you've never been in there, I highly encourage. You have to. It's got to be on your bucket list of stadiums that you need to go to at some point in your life. And I don't care if you're an LSU fan or not, but it's an experience for sure. And with Brian Kelly, you think now he's out. Where do you go from here? Where does LSU go? And the number one coach that everybody's floating out there is Lane Kiffin. And there's going to be, I feel, a bidding war for Lane Kiffin's services. You've got the Florida job, you've got the LSU job. I really don't think that we talk about fit. I don't think that Penn State is a good fit for Lane Kiffin. Will Penn State try to make a run at Lane Kiffin? I don't know. I think that kind of remains to be seen. But I don't foresee that happening. I think it's a 2-team race for Lane Kiffin's services. And it's really going to come down to Lane Kiffin and where he wants to go. Because I don't have any doubt in my mind that Florida and LSU could both, like salary-wise, whatever LSU's willing to pay, Florida can match that and vice versa. Both schools have phenomenal resources, facilities, everything. Recruiting hotbeds, they are just Florida's a hotbed for talent. Louisiana is a hotbed for talent. There's been a lot of great players that have come out of the state of Louisiana. And to me, it's going to be about where Lane Kiffin wants to go. Now, my opinion, and I posted it in the video that on my Instagram, my opinion is that LSU is a better job subjectively. If it's Colby Allen, one can only wish, right? If it's Colby Allen in the coaching sweepstakes between LSU and Florida, I would go to the LSU side. I'd go to LSU, mainly because of the fact that, one, you have you have all the resources, they have the money, and you think about the fit, the athletes that LSU has been able to get over the years. You think of guys like Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. You think of the quarterback play that they've had in recent years and the success, Heisman Trophy winners, Jaden Daniels, Joe Burrow, that just some phenomenal athletes, great players, and I can only imagine what a guy like Lane Kiffin could do with that kind of talent. I mean, to be honest, think about that for just a second. What could Lane Kiffin do with Jamar Chase, with receivers the caliber of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson at LSU, and a quarterback like Joe Burrow? Like, that kind of talent. Likewise, on the flip side of that coin, when you look at what Florida has with like guys like with Wilson, with Trey Wilson, with Jaden Baugh, even DJ Lagway, you don't think for a second that Lane Kiffin couldn't get the best out of DJ Lagway? I for one believe that he would be able to. He's a great quarterback coach, great play caller. And if you don't think that he would put DJ Lagway in the best position for him to be successful, you're kidding yourself. Now, I said in the video, sorry, Florida fans, I think Lane Kiffin's going to LSU. However, I've kind of taken some time, and, it takes a big man to admit when he's wrong. And, luckily I'm a big man. I'm not admitting that I'm wrong, but I am admitting that I will say that I have taken a step back over the last 48 hours, 2 days since I posted that video, and really thought about it. And I wrote out pros and cons list between LSU and Florida. And I can say this, guys, it's really going to come down to where he wants to coach, ultimately. Now, me, like I said, I'd pick LSU. Lane Kiffin might see Florida as a better fit for him. He might see LSU as a better fit. Who knows? And it only remains to be seen. Also, he might just like Ole Miss. He might want to remain at Ole Miss. He might use this as an opportunity to leverage Ole Miss and say, listen to all these job offers I'm getting from schools like Florida and LSU, and Ole Miss will do whatever they can to keep him, they'll do whatever they can to keep him around, because, I mean, it's like the success that he's had over the last few years, couple years really, where he's been a consistent college football playoff contender. Last year with them, beating Georgia, big win there in Oxford. You think of all the great wins he's piled up over the last couple years. He's got that program on the right trajectory. They're already ready to build a big bronze statue of Lane Kiffin in Oxford. So all that he really would need is leverage, to say, if I turn down this Florida job, if I turn down this LSU job, I need to be guaranteed that I'm going to be given all the resources that I ask for to get my team in the best position to win an SEC championship and to win a national championship. And bottom line is, whatever Lane Kiffin decides to do, whether he decides to go to LSU, whether he decides to go to Florida, whether he decides to stay at Ole Miss, bottom line is the guy is getting paid. He's going to get a bag, one way or another. I mean, you're talking LSU, Florida, you're talking maybe $14, $15 million a year salary. And Ole Miss, could they match that? I think they would find a way to. When you got a coach that's as talented as he is, I think you have to find a way to make that happen. So, it's my 2 cents on the matter. Take it whichever way you want, but maybe you see things kind of similar, maybe not. If you don't, hey, man, I love open discussion. I love talking about it. I love for people to message me on social media. If you have my number, you text me, whatever. I mean, I love talking about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I love nothing more than releasing an episode and people seeing me out, and saying, hey, man, I really like what you said about this. And I love the open dialogue. So please, by all means, if you got any more thoughts, send them on my social media, Instagram and Facebook, whichever one you use to communicate in that social media space. And I'll be glad to carry on a conversation with you about, anything. So, all right, moving on. Thursday is the prediction show, and now we're nearly 22 minutes into this show, and we haven't done the first prediction. So let's get into it. And obviously I have the game of the week that will be coming up here in a minute. Then I also have an under the radar game, that I really would like for y'all to listen to. But first, we're going to start things off with the number 10 team in the country, Miami, going to Dallas to take on SMU. And like I said, before the season started, this was going to be a big matchup. This was going to be a ranked matchup. SMU coming off of a playoff berth. Didn't expect them to really drop off the way that they've dropped off this year. They're sitting there with a 5-3 record. But this is a chance really for SMU to kind of earn some respect back. But when we look at the numbers, when we look at the metrics here of this contest, there's a few glaring things that stick out to me that concern me for SMU. And when we look at Miami, we look at Miami's offense, 55th in the country in overall total offense at 409 yards a game. They're passing, they're 40th. They're averaging about 257 yards a game. Rushing, they're putting up 152. Scoring about 34 points a game. The big thing that sticks out is SMU is ranked 135th. That is one spot from dead last in the country in their pass defense. That, to me, is where this football game could really, really get out of hand. Because Miami, what we want to talk about Carson Beck and his interceptions a couple weeks ago, throwing 4 picks. But what we really need to look at here is SMU. And when you watch this SMU secondary on film and you watch them perform, it's not good. They don't do anything well. Miami is a team that they have athletes everywhere. They have a guy by the name of Malachi Toney, leading receiver on their football team, currently sitting at 562 yards on the year, 43 catches and 3 touchdowns. Carson Beck being as experienced as he is, completing, and he's very accurate, 73% of his passes. Yes, he does have the interceptions, got 7 on the year, but nearly 1,700 yards and 12 touchdowns. This is kind of like, I think this game is going to go about what you would think. They say games aren't played on paper, but some of them you really have to look at the, glaring differences and the concerns for SMU. SMU losing to Wake Forest last week, 13-12. They're just not really able to generate any kind of offense. They're 70th in the FBS in total offense. They don't run the ball well at all. So what Miami's going to do, they're top 10 in defense in rushing. Miami's going to try to make Kevin Jennings beat them. And the way Kevin Jennings has been playing this year, we can talk about the yardage, that he's over 2,100 yards and this and that, but what we need to really talk about is the fact that Miami is a completely different animal. They're top 25 in the country in pass defense, top 10 in rush defense. SMU's not going to be able to be balanced in this football game. Miami's going to be able to put more guys on the field to defend the pass because of their ability to stop the run. And that, to me, between those two things that I just mentioned, also with the fact that SMU's pass defense is horrible, Miami currently favored in this contest by 12.5 points. I don't see any reason why you would want to take SMU to cover here. And if you're betting this game, take Miami, take the points, feel confident about your bet, because I don't see SMU even really coming close to covering. I mean, Miami just beat Stanford last weekend 42-7, and I see this one being a game that could get out of hand very early. I see this could potentially be a game that's 24-0 at halftime, or worse, just because of the fact that Miami is going to take their shots. They see the vulnerabilities in this SMU secondary. I think a guy like Malachi Toney, he's going to have over 100 yards pretty easily in this football game. Carson Beck should have over 300 yards passing. A very talented offensive unit for Miami is going to make the Hurricanes roll in this contest. So take Miami, take the points on that one. Moving on to our second game. And this is one that really intriguing matchup here. You have the number 17 team in the country in Cincinnati going on the road out to Salt Lake to take on the number 24 Utah Utes. Utah favored in this contest by 9.5. Couple key areas that we want to look at when we look at these metrics in this football game is Utah loves to run the football. Loves it. 267 yards a game. That is good enough for 5th in the country for them. You got a guy like Wayshawn Parker running the football, and then also helps to have a dual threat quarterback with a guy that can, really plays the option game very well in Devin Dampier. And when I look at that and you contrast that with Cincinnati's defense, what's the weak spot, in Cincinnati's defense? And that's the rush, 64th in the country in that department. So they don't play the run very well. I mean, they're middle grade, I guess you could say, out of 136. They're kind of near middle of the pack in both categories, pass defense and rush defense. Utah is going to want to run the football. They're going to want to run the football. They're going to be physical. They're going to run downhill. And also, it is really hard to keep this Utah team from extending drives. They're 3rd in the country, third down percentage. They convert about 54% of their third downs. And then that's a big thing in itself, but also the fact that Cincinnati is going to be, Utah's ranking in the top 30, I believe, in time of possession. Cincinnati doesn't hold the ball very long when they're on offense. They're 135th in the country in time of possession per game, 25 minutes a game. If you allow Utah to come in, run the football at will with Wayshawn Parker, and get downhill, I think the numbers looking really good for this game. If the run, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly in this football game, in this contest, what direction it's going to go. And that's going to be if Utah's able, if they come out first drive, Utah gets the ball on their first possession, they run the football at will down the field and score very easily. It could be a long day for the Cincinnati Bearcats. Now, to me, this is when we look at the quarterbacks in this football game, you look at Devin Dampier for Utah, you look at Brendan Sorsby. Brendan Sorsby, y'all, if you haven't watched this kid play this year, he is a joy to watch play the game of football. 1,800 yards on the year, 1,829 to be exact, 19 touchdowns, only 1 interception, completing 65% of his passes. He is the fuel that makes the Cincinnati offense go. This team on offense is going to live and die by Brendan Sorsby. You've got a guy like Cyrus Allen, 365 yards on 33 catches this year, 8 touchdowns, just an absolute touchdown machine for him. Evan Pryor running the football. Cincinnati's going to have to find a way. Key to the game for Cincinnati. You want to pull the upset. You've got to find a way to get Utah off the field on third down. That is the biggest thing, is you're not very good on holding teams. You're not good on stopping teams on third down, and Utah is 3rd in the country in third down conversion rate. So That's the big issue here. Cincinnati's defense is going to have to force Utah to play from behind the sticks. If the ideal drive for Utah is going to be first down, 4 or 5 yard run, 2nd and 6, 2nd and 5, they have the whole playbook available to them at that point. That is not a winning formula for Cincinnati at all. And that is where I think the game is going to live and die. I think that Utah is going to turn this game into we're going to run the football, we're going to control the clock. Cincinnati's not going to see the field because, as long as Brendan Sorsby's on the field, Cincinnati has a chance to score points and move the football. But the best defense is a good offense or a time-consuming offense. Likewise, though, when we look at Utah's defense, they're no slouch in these departments either. They're giving up 285 yards a game. That's good for 12th in the country. Passing, they're giving up less than 150 yards. That's 7th in the country. And when you look at, the strong part of the Cincinnati offense, what is it? They're 31st in running the football. Utah, rushing, 56th. Can Cincinnati run the football? Who's going to run the football better? I think that's what it's going to come down to. Ultimately, is third downs and who runs the football better. If Utah converts most of their third downs, 60% of them, I think Utah wins. If Utah has over 200 yards rushing, I think Utah wins. If Cincinnati can run the football on this Utah defense, maybe they can keep them off the field. So ultimately, this game, I've wrestled with this one in this prediction. I've wrestled with the spread. The spread's 9.5 points. I think if Utah's able to run the football at will and Cincinnati's not able to stop them and they're converting third downs like they're Halloween candy, just one after the other, I think it could be a long day for Cincinnati. Given the fact that Utah's weak spot on defense is the run, Cincinnati wants to run the football. Utah wants to run the football. Cincinnati's defense rushing is not that great. I think that whoever runs the football, who's better on third down, I've got Utah winning this one, but I've got this one being a kind of a low-scoring contest. I don't have really either of these teams getting to the mid-20s in points. I think it could be somewhere in the neighborhood of 24-16, 24-17, somewhere in there. And I'm going to go with Utah, but I'm going to go Cincinnati is going to cover in this football game because I think you're going to see a lot of runs, a lot of, offenses being on the field. I think you're going to see a lot of 8, 9, 10-minute drives, things like that. Very limited opportunities to score for both of these offenses. So, therefore, I wouldn't be surprised if, come Monday we're reviewing this football game and it ends up being 16-13 or 17-14. But right now, I'm going to take Utah in this one 24-17, and that means that Cincinnati covers. So a game that I will be attending this Saturday, just an hour and a half down the road in Jacksonville, will be the world's largest outdoor cocktail party, Georgia and Florida. The Georgia-Florida game. And if you're a fan of either team, Florida fans will say the Florida-Georgia game. Georgia fans like myself say the Georgia-Florida game. Georgia-Florida just sounds better, guys. Just admit it. It rolls off the tongue better than Florida-Georgia. It just does. So I will be there at this game. I will be in attendance watching it. If you've never been to this football game, it's a great experience, not just for the game itself, because here in recent years, been kind of lopsided, aside from the year with, Dan Mullen as head coach and Kyle Trask at the quarterback position for the Gators. This game has been pretty lopsided over the last decade. It's always a game. It's one of those things where in recent memory, Georgia fans can remember there's been some times in this football game where Georgia's been a heavy favorite or Georgia's been a favorite and Florida will give them all that they want on the field. And it is truly one of those rivalries where you can kind of, I hate this because it's a cliche saying, but it's one of those rivalries where a lot of times you can take the record and you can take the rankings and you can kind of put them to the side for this football game because both of these teams want to win. Georgia would love nothing more than to beat Florida. Florida would love nothing more than to absolutely derail Georgia's season, because Georgia, with another loss here, it puts them on the ropes and it puts them at risk of not making the college football playoff. Georgia currently has, according to ESPN, about an 82% chance to make the playoff as it sits right now. With a loss against Florida, those odds go way down. So, obviously Georgia, to keep their season on the right track, they've got to win this football game. And a couple things I want to go over in this football game is, everybody wants to talk about, the fact that, what we've heard from, some Georgia fans is that, Florida has no chance. Florida doesn't have a chance. Well, let me tell you something. Let me go through a few things to where I think that Georgia's going to have to earn this win. It isn't going to be a waltz into Jacksonville, walk out there, beat Florida by 20 or 30 points. Although I'm sure all Georgia fans would agree that would be very good to go in there and do that. It would be great. Bragging rights for another year. You can kind of rub their nose in it, so to speak. But two things I want to go over for Florida's side. One, their defense. And I am not, and I've said it many times, I am a Georgia fan, but there will be no slander. You will hear no slander from me towards Florida's defense, because this is a unit that they're not top in the country. They're not top 10. They're not top 20. They're a manageable unit on defense. They're decent against the run, 32nd in the country. And scoring defense, they're about the same, giving up about 20 points a game. It's a unit that has been banged up a little bit first part of the season. So that's another issue. They've got some players out and could cause, some issues with this, but Florida's defense has been serviceable all year. This is not a defense that just will roll over and just die. We saw we've seen what they've done against some teams like Texas and everything else, this year so far. So this is not a I think Georgia's going to come in here and drop 40 points type contest. So if you were looking for me to predict a 41-6 Georgia win, that's not going to happen here. But when we look at Florida's offense, this is where the issues kind of rear their ugly head, is the fact that Florida turnovers haven't been good. When we look at two different things, DJ Lagway has thrown 9 picks up to this point in the season. In 7 games, not good at all. 7 games, 9 picks. But then you look at Georgia's time of possession. They are top 10 in the country in this metric, averaging 33 minutes and 8 seconds of time of possession a game. If there's anything that Florida cannot do Saturday, it is turn the football over and give Georgia extra possessions. That plays right into Georgia's hand, and I think if you do that, Florida comes in here and turns the ball over 2 or 3 times, I think you're looking at a blowout. I really do. On the other side of this thing, Florida, no head coach, nothing to lose. They sit at 3-4 here as we start November. Nothing to lose. Interim coach. I feel Florida's going to pull all the stops out. Expect some trick plays. Expect a lot of misdirection. Expect a lot of shots down the field. Everybody knows Georgia notoriously is primarily a man defense. They want to cover in man-to-man. Florida's going to test that. DJ Lagway throws one of the best deep balls in the country. Now, it's got him in trouble sometimes this year, but I 100% foresee Florida trying to air the football out as much as possible. I would expect quite a few deep shots. They're gonna get their guys lined up. They're gonna get the matchups they want. They're gonna take their shots. Now, whether they hit on them is 100% up to Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense right now, 71st against the pass in the country. That's the one metric to me if there's one thing Georgia doesn't do good on the defensive side of the ball, and we've seen it this year against teams like Tennessee, is they are very vulnerable in the secondary. Now, does the bye week help? Do they get some things, buttoned up? Do they figure some things out? That remains to be seen, and we'll see that come Saturday. But 71st against the pass, but top 10 nearly, sitting at 11th in rush defense, giving up 91 yards a game. Florida has a running back named Jaden Baugh. They are going to want, make no mistake about it, Florida's going to want to run the football because historically this game has come down to who can run the football better, ultimately. Most of the time the team that runs the football better and more efficiently is going to be the team that wins. Georgia's going to try to stop that because what Florida wants to do, they want to run the football to keep Georgia just honest enough. And I'm not saying Florida going to come out here and run for 200 yards, but they want to run the football good enough to where it keeps Georgia's secondary's eyes in the backfield just for that split second to where DJ Lagway can work play action and go down the field. Now, unfortunately for Florida, Vernell Brown injured. He's not going to play in this football game. Their leading receiver, so that definitely stings for them. Vernell Brown, a guy that's got, nearly 500 yards on the year with 32 catches. One of DJ Lagway's favorite targets. He's got great hands, great release, runs good routes. He's definitely going to be missed in this football game for that passing offense, but Florida still has tons of playmakers. You still have a guy like Wilson out there that is more than capable of taking over that role as that number one receiver. I think if there's a few categories that I can put and say, I think here's what this game is going to come down to, is going to be, one, whichever team can run the football better. Obviously, when you look at the numbers, Georgia and Florida both right there neck and neck in rush offense as far as compared to where they're at on the rest of the teams in the country. Florida at 32nd. And, that's Florida's defense. Florida's offense is 102nd in rushing at 128 yards a game. Georgia, 33rd at 190 yards a game. So when we look at these two, the numbers will tell us that Georgia should run the ball better, right? Well, like I said, this game is one of those where these papers, these notes that I'm looking at right now, and these metrics, sometimes they don't matter. It comes down to the offensive line play. Florida has a really good offensive line, y'all. Georgia also has a good offensive line. Which offensive line plays better? This game's going to come down to the trenches. Who's going to win the trenches? Who's going to establish the run? Who's going to wear the other one out? That's where we're going to see the difference in this football game. Turnovers, time of possession, and running the football. Whatever team keeps the ball, whatever team runs better, is going to win this football game. For that reason, and for, the Georgia has progressively gotten better throughout the season at running the football. We've seen it over the last few games where the emergence, if you will, of Chauncey Bowens, the freshman running back for Georgia, their leading rusher currently, 376 yards on 70 carries and 4 touchdowns. Also, you have Nate Frazier, Josh McCray, Dwight Phillips, a great stable of backs for Georgia to keep running in and rotating fresh legs in. I think the depth at that position for Georgia wins this football game. I think Georgia comes out. I think Georgia covers in this football game. Currently, Georgia's favored by 7.5. I've got Georgia winning this football game, and I'm going to go 30-20 Georgia in this one. And I'll be there. So if you're going to be at this football game and you'd like to link up for just a brief minute, I'll probably be roaming the tailgates. I'll be around. If you're going to be there, find me. We'll talk some ball. If you're in red and black, I wish you the best. If you're in blue and orange, I wish you the worst. That's just how this that's just how this thing goes down there in Jacksonville. And but like I said, if you're going to be there, reach out. All right, so moving on. Now we go to Austin, Texas. Vanderbilt. Interesting line here, because earlier in the season, Vanderbilt wasn't getting the respect by way of the spreads, that we're seeing now. Probably has a lot to do in this scenario. The game is in Austin, but probably has a lot to do with the fact that Arch Manning currently, it's being reported. I don't have any updated information as of right now. On Wednesday night, it's about 10:30 at night. I don't have any updated information on Arch Manning's availability for this football game. It looks like that he's in concussion protocol. It looks like Matthew Campbell's going to get the start. However, if you are a Texas fan, I would feel comfortable with Matthew Campbell throwing the football for this Longhorns football team. The times that he's come in so far this year, I've been impressed. And you'll hear a lot of other people in the college football media space say the same. He's looked really good in these moments. I mean, that touchdown he threw against Mississippi State, I mean, that was a dot. I mean, the kid can throw, more than capable of getting it done on that side of things. Here's a couple areas to me that when I look at Texas and I look at Vanderbilt, and we compare defense to offense, because that's where the game is won, ultimately. That's an Einstein remark there, I know, but that's exactly where the game is won and lost, is when you look at a defense like Texas and the fact that they're third in the country in stopping the run. This is still a Texas unit that has somewhat lived up to the preseason hype. Now, the offense has kind of been the, not really Achilles heel, but it's been the thing that's been holding Texas back from being that team that everybody thought they were going to be before the season. The preseason favorite to win the national championship. Between them and Ohio State, I think they had the highest odds to win the national championship. And that to me is, it's the offense that's kind of been crippling this football team, I guess, because the defense is still very good. I mean, top 20 in the country in almost every metric. Scoring defense, they're top 10, third against the run, like I mentioned, 19th in yards given up per game. Vanderbilt wants to run the football. This is strength on strength here. Vanderbilt, with Diego Pavia in that read option game, he's almost got 500 yards on the year on 85 carries. That's the issue for Texas, or not really the issue. The key here for that defense is going to be eye discipline. They're very good at that, and they're very good at stopping the run. So this is an area to me where I feel like we need to be locked in on this area and watch how Texas handles this Vanderbilt rushing attack. Because Vanderbilt wants to run the football. I mean, every team really to an extent does. I mean, you have these teams that love airing it out. But running the football, especially in the Southeastern Conference, this is, a lot of games are won and lost on your ability to run the football and run it efficiently. And that's just, one thing that really sticks out to me. Now, Vanderbilt's defense likewise also, and this is a thing that shocking to me, but very, serviceable against the run. 18th in the country, giving up 101 yards a game. And scoring defense, 24th in the country, 18.8 points a game on average. So Vanderbilt is reached this point. Shout out to Clark Lee. Done a great job there in Nashville with this football team. And we look at, when we look at these teams on paper, and you're going to hear me say it a lot throughout the course of you listening to this podcast, or if you have listened to me, you've heard me say it a lot. A lot of these games aren't played on paper. Vanderbilt marching into Austin and getting a win would be massive. This would be something to where we would mark this date down on the calendar. November 1st, 2025, as the day that Clark Lee finally got Vanderbilt over whatever hump was in front of them. And don't get me wrong, yeah, the win over Missouri, great. But to beat a team like Texas, that preseason favorite to win the national championship, would be massive for this Vanderbilt football team. Now, the biggest thing with Vanderbilt here is both of these teams, really. I mean, I'm not going to single out Vanderbilt in this category, but when you look at these two teams, they are two of the most heavily penalized teams in the country. They're actually right there neck and neck with each other in this category. Texas ranking 116 in the country in penalty yards a game with 65.6. Vanderbilt at 117th with 65.8. So expect a lot of flags to be thrown in this football game. Thank God the refs don't have an allotment because they'd run out. And Texas is another thing. +7 in turnover margin. Vanderbilt has got to take care of the football. Now, I'm not saying that they've had an issue with that this year. They really haven't. But on the road against Texas, against a really good defense, a stingy defense that takes the ball away, got to be on your A game. Vanderbilt cannot go into Texas with their B game and win this football game. No chance. I don't even think you could make the argument that if they go into Austin with their A- game that they win. I think you've got to be on your P's and Q's, so to speak. Cross your T's, dot your I's, whatever you got to do. But Vanderbilt's got to play their best game, I feel like, Saturday to beat Texas. Texas currently, 1.5-point favorite, pretty much a coin flip game in the eyes of Vegas. The fact that it's in Austin and the fact that I really do trust this Texas defense. I'm not so much sold on the offense, but the defense, an 11 a.m. kick, a little bit of an earlier kick than Vanderbilt's been used to over the last couple weeks. I think a lot of it goes into the fact that they're on the road. I think Texas wins this football game, but I think it's pretty tight. I think this could be – I don't think we see a repeat. I don't think we see a shootout in this football game like we saw with Texas and Mississippi State last week. I don't think that Texas puts themselves in that position again. I think that Texas runs the football well. They're going to have to lean on the run a little bit with Matthew Campbell starting at quarterback without Arch Manning, because Matthew Campbell's not as big of a run threat as Arch is. So Texas is going to have to heavily lean on the run and lean on that defense. I think it's more low scoring. I think Texas wins, and I've got Texas winning this one 20-16 in Austin. Texas wins and covers against Vanderbilt. So, Big Ten matchup. Since, I've had people say all you talk about is the SEC, even though I try to cover as many conferences as I can. But, a lot of the big games, guys, are in the SEC. I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Here lately, the last few weeks, the ranked-on-ranked matchups, the matchups that people want to talk about, have been in the Southeastern Conference. But here we go. For your listening pleasure, Big Ten contest. USC going on the road to play Nebraska. Great quarterback matchup here. Jaden Maiava versus Dylan Raiola. Two guys that very efficient passers. Raiola with 1,911 yards this year, 17 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, completing about 73% of his passes. Jaden Maiava with 2,180 yards, 15 touchdowns, 4 picks, 68% of his passes. Quarterbacks very much, evenly matched, so to speak. This is a true strength-on-strength contest because Nebraska quietly, and if you don't pay attention to Nebraska that much, it's more or less going to be a stat that you're going to be like, whoa, I didn't know that. But if you do pay attention to college football as closely as I do, it's not surprising. But Nebraska's secondary is the second-ranked secondary in the country against the pass, giving up 127 yards a game in that department. What does USC historically, with Lincoln Riley there, what do they like to do? They love to run, or they love to pass the football. First in the country with 326 yards a game. Their offense is first in the country, averaging 530 yards a game. And when you got guys like Jaden Maava, like I mentioned earlier, Waymon Jordan at the running back position, and Mekhi Lemon is one of the most underrated receivers in college football. You know, everybody wants to talk about the Jeremiah Smith and the Ryan Williams of the world, the Omar Cooper, Elijah Sarad at Indiana. Everybody wants to talk about those guys. But Mekhi Lemon is quietly having a very good season there for Southern Cal. 758 yards on 48 catches, 6 touchdowns on the year so far. By far and away, Maava's best target, most reliable target. And the biggest thing for Nebraska here, this is I've been critical of Matt Rule on the show. I've been critical of Nebraska on the show because Nebraska is one of those teams that every year since Rule's been there, it's been like, is this the year that they break through? Is this the year that Nebraska gets it done? Every year, they have found new ways to disappoint, and they have found new ways to just absolutely just piss down their leg in the big games, not close. And this is an opportunity for Nebraska to switch the narrative, pull the Uno reverse, so to speak, on the narrative. And big contest. It's at home. It's at night. You know, Husker Stadium, going to be rocking. You know, I can't remember what the sellout streak is up to at this point. However many games they've sold out in a row. Crazy stat. Very, very, very passionate fan base to be able to do that. And what better stage, national TV at night, to be able to knock off USC. A USC program that, yes, they do sit at 5-2, but a USC program that's played some really good football over the last few weeks, really. You know, now the loss to Notre Dame a couple weeks ago still stings. Bounce back spot for USC here. You know, biggest keys to, I guess the biggest keys to the game for USC. When you look at the defense, they give up a lot of pass yards as well. Rushing, they're kind of middle of the pack, 57th in the country in that department. Scoring defense, kind of middle of the pack as well, USC's defense. So USC, over the last few years, has not been known to play, lights out defense. That's just not Lincoln Riley's MO. But the best defense for USC is going to be extending drives. And luckily, 6th in the country in that department, converting 53.1% of their third downs. So USC has got to extend drives. And another issue, another key area is in the red area. We've seen a Nebraska team that has kind of struggled in that area. They're kind of middle of the road, 59th in the country in red zone offense. But USC's defense, even though I mentioned all the stat lines a few minutes ago about how they're not good against this, they're not good against this, they're not good against that, one area that they are good in, and they rank 2nd in the country in, is their red zone defense. So it is going to be very imperative for Nebraska to capitalize on their drives and score touchdowns when they get in the red area. You're not going to beat USC in a field goal kicking contest. That's not the route you want to take. If you're Matt Rule, if you're Dylan Raiola, you've got to lean on these playmakers like Emmett Johnson, who needs to touch the football at least 20 times. The stat that if he touches the football over 20 times, Nebraska is very good. If he doesn't touch the ball 20 times, their record is not so good. Isaiah Hunter as well, got to lean on him as well in that red area. Throw some balls to him. Throw some 50-50s to him. Got to be able to lean on your playmakers in this scenario. I think this game has the potential to be one of the most exciting contests of the weekend due to the fact that both of these teams' offenses, I feel like, are going to light it up. They're going to score because the strength of one is not the strength of another, vice versa. The only area where I think you could be given an advantage is USC's passing, is USC's passing offense is, the caliber that it is. But also, like I said, Nebraska's passing defense, very stingy unit. That's what the matchup there, I think that's what the whole game is going to come down to. In this particular, contest, I trust that Lincoln Riley offense. Like I said, I'm not going to start trusting Nebraska until they give me a reason to trust them. And so I trust Lincoln Riley's play calling. I trust Jaden Mayava. I trust Mekhi Libman more than I trust Dylan Raiola and Isaiah Hunter. I think this game has the potential to be high scoring. Somewhat high scoring, I guess. So what? But I think this game could potentially be USC 37, Nebraska 31. I really do. Just because I think both of these teams are just going to try to outscore each other. But it all comes down to extending drives for USC, which they're really good in that department. And it's going to come down to who can capitalize in the red area. And I've got USC winning that football game. So an under-the-radar game that I'm going to go through real quick before we go into After the Whistle's game of the week is going to be, and if you're a Group of 5 person, you like watching the Group of 5, this is a game to keep an eye on because it has some implications, potentially for the college football playoff. Let me get one little sip of water, and then we'll get into it because my throat's getting kind of dry here. All right, so Navy at North Texas. Yep, you heard me right. This is probably something that my frequent listeners are probably hearing that going, what? Not really two teams that I talk about very often. But I figured, heck, throw a Group of 5 game in here, catch everybody on their toes. I like to keep y'all guessing, when it comes to that kind of thing. So, Navy 7-0, quietly 7-0, going to and playing North Texas 7-1. One of the most prolific offenses in the country in North Texas. Number 1 in scoring, 6th in total, yards per game, 6th in passing, high-flying offense. On one side, you have a high-flying offense, passes the ball. On the other side, you have the first-ranked, top-ranked rush offense in the country. So what's the key for Navy here? Run the football. Time of possession. Keep North Texas off the field. That's the key. That's the biggest key for Navy. If I don't give you any more, that's number 1. Navy's defense, just, serviceable. North Texas defense, against the pass, they're top 20. Against the run, they're giving up almost 200 yards a game. So that is the problem. That's the red flag for me for this Texas defense is the fact that they're giving up nearly 191 yards a game on average, and Navy's offense is averaging 318. I don't foresee Navy having any issue whatsoever running the football. The key here is going to be turnovers, the turnover battle, because Navy, if they can run the football like the stats suggest they're going to be able to here, if they're able to run the football and they're able to run the football effectively, it's going to be really hard for North Texas to match. It's going to put a little bit more of a strain on North Texas offense where they have to score points. They have to take advantage of the limited possessions that they're going to get throughout this football game. Blake Horvath, great athlete. Navy's just had some, Navy and Army have had some really good, athletes at that quarterback position over the last couple years. But Blake Horvath, currently the leading rusher for this team, 814 yards on 119 carries and 12 touchdowns. To add to that, over 1,000 yards passing, 7 touchdowns, 3 picks, completing 65% of his passes. So this is a big game for Blake Horvath. I've talked about him. I don't think I've talked about him on this show so far this year. But, I will talk about him now. And this is going to come down to his ability to manage the game. It's going to come down to Navy's ability to manage the clock. The only way I think they beat North Texas, mistake-free football, no turnovers, run the football, play your offense. Play within your means. Get in that workspace, play within that workspace. Don't try to do anything cute. Don't try to dress it up. No window dressing. Just line up and run the football. Because what we're looking at here on these numbers is North Texas is not going to really be able to stop Navy from running the football. Unless North Texas comes out and has just a career day stopping the run. But Navy's going to commit to it. They're going to do it. The style of offense that they run, they're going to run the football. It's just like they don't even have to hide it. The way they line up. They're running the football. So stop it somehow. Navy ranking 4th in the country in converting third downs, and that's the product of this offense. They extend drives, but North Texas, like I mentioned, the turnover battle. North Texas 9th in the country with a +8 turnover margin. They take the ball away. They don't give it up. So that to me is the most important part, as I said earlier, of this football game is Navy cannot turn the football over if they want a chance to win this football game. Extend drives, Blake Horvath, run the football, play your game, and Navy can come out on top. North Texas, you have to take advantage of your possessions. You can't turn the football over. So who wins this game? This has been one for me that I really had to do a deep dive. I don't follow these teams as closely as I follow the other ones. Had to kind of deep dive into this one a little bit. I'm going to roll a little bit, I guess you could say, upset maybe. I'm going to roll with Navy in this one because I just don't see North Texas being able to stop this rushing attack. I don't foresee North Texas stopping Blake Horvath. I think the strain that this offense is going to put on North Texas's defense, but also this Navy offense is going to put a strain on North Texas's offense because North Texas is going to understand they don't have many possessions to capitalize. And one mistake could cost them this football game. And I just don't know if North Texas is going to go the whole game without making just one mistake, whether it be a fumble, whether it be an interception, or whatever. And I've got Navy winning this one. North Texas favored by 6.5, but give me Navy to win this football game, go to 8-0, and continue to march down the path of potentially getting that group of 5 spot in the playoff. So that was a little bit of a group of 5 game, if you care, which good little thing to talk about, switch things up every now and then. So the moment some of you wait for, maybe, I don't know. After the Whistle's game of the week, Oklahoma traveling to Knoxville. Number 13 Oklahoma taking on the number 17 Tennessee Vols. Night game in Neyland. Dark mode jerseys. Tennessee's wearing the black. 100,000+ fans in the building. Josh Heupel's alma mater across the field from him. A lot of cool storylines around this football game. Tennessee currently favored by 3.5. And a couple key things here. Oklahoma, we may have jumped the gun a little bit on Oklahoma, myself included, because I was really hyping this team up a month ago. Then the injury to John Mateer happens. Red River happens. Now Oklahoma's kind of on the cusp of they still could make the playoff, but their margin for error is razor thin, paper thin, as a matter of fact. The paper right here that I'm holding, this paper, it's razor thin for this Oklahoma team. You lose another game, you're done. This is essentially a playoff elimination game for both teams. Both teams coming into here with 2 losses. Both teams sitting at 6-2. This is a put up or shut up type football game here. Quarterback comparisons, like I mentioned, John Mateer hasn't really looked up until this point as good as he did prior to the injury. The speculation is he still injured? Is that, thumb on his throwing hand still bothering him? He just doesn't have the zip that he had on that thumb prior to the injury. And, we saw that against Texas. We've seen it ever since. We saw it against Ole Miss. Just not really the same guy. Likewise, you've got, Steady Eddie on the other side, Joey Aguilar, who's had a phenomenal season. The talk around Tennessee during the offseason, Nico Amaliava left in the spring. Everybody's like, what's Tennessee going to do at quarterback? Tennessee posted the video of a quarterback throwing a football and had the image blurred out. They kept it a secret for a while, and then it came out as Joey Aguilar, transfer from, formerly, you know him as App State, transferred to UCLA, a little bit of a quarterback swap, whatever you want to call it, and then comes to Knoxville. So I say Steady Eddie, but, he's been a very solid quarterback there for Tennessee this year. He doesn't make many mistakes. I mean, yes, he does have the 6 interceptions on the year, but very much a product of Josh Heupel's offense in the sense that they love to take risks, and they love to take challenges. Tennessee's at its best when it can take those risks. Now, they've got to be mitigated risks. You can't throw into triple coverage. You can't throw into double coverage against this Oklahoma defense. The biggest key for Tennessee here is this Oklahoma defense is still very formidable against the run, especially. They're nearly the top 5 defense in that regard, giving up about 85 yards a game. Overall yardage given up, they're 6th in the country there, giving up 240 yards a game. So something's got to give in this football game. Tennessee loves running the football, and I know before you come at me, Tennessee's a throwing offense. They spread the ball. Tennessee still, and you ask Josh Heupel, and you look at this Tennessee team on film and what they've done since Heupel's been in Knoxville, they still love to run the football because their receivers get so much attention. Guys like Chris Brazzell get so much attention on the outside that they require extra bodies. You spread a team out like Tennessee does, you get a light box, and you want to run the football. Oklahoma is going to have to step up and stop the run with a light box. And this will be a really good test for Brent Venables' defense here. Can they stop Tennessee's run game? Because if Oklahoma can stop Tennessee's run game with a light box, and we've seen this with Tennessee with other teams that they've played since Heupel's been there, if teams can stop Tennessee's run game with a light box, it is very tough sledding because when you make this Tennessee team one-dimensional, they have to take a lot of risks, and sometimes those risks end up in turnovers. Interceptions thrown down the field. Now, Oklahoma's defense, they're top 10 in passing. This is a very formidable defense, by far and away the best defense that Tennessee has played up to this point in the country, so it's going to be a really good test for this Tennessee offense. Now, talk about the flip side of that coin and Oklahoma's offense. Not really as good as we were anticipating. A month ago with John Mateer, the way he was playing, he was in the, a lot of people's Heisman boards, top 4 before the injury. Everybody was talking about how great, he was and how good he was looking, myself included. But it's a unit that's really fallen off since the injury, and they haven't appeared to get back to a point where they are clicking again. They don't score a whole lot of points. They score about 28.4 a game, 73rd in the country. It's like a movie that I watched, Wolf of Wall Street. You got to pump those numbers up. And if you're going to beat Tennessee in Neyland at night, you got to pump those numbers up. Oklahoma's going to have to score here. And Tennessee, good on third down. They convert about 47% of the time. So they're pretty good on third down there. They're going to extend drives. But the issue with Oklahoma is the turnovers. This is an area that is really concerning to this Oklahoma Sooner football team. 117th in the country in that area. -6 turnover margin. They are giving the ball up more than they're taking it away. Now, you can play solid defense all you want. The issue is, if your offense is giving the ball away, your defense has to be on the field a long time. This up-tempo Tennessee attack can really wear, and I've seen this offense firsthand give the best defenses fits because of the nature of the tempo, because of the nature of the fact that they stretch the field. They want to try to go for the big, the chunk plays. They want to beat you down the field. That's exactly what Tennessee's motive and what their game plan here needs to be. Is you've got to take advantage when Oklahoma turns the ball over, and they pretty well could, given the stats and given the what we're looking at. Oklahoma's been a turnover machine on offense so far this year. Tennessee, on the flip side of that, 22nd in the country with a +5 turnover margin. So Tennessee's taking the ball away more than they're giving it up. So that's if I've got it in my notes right here, that's one area that I'm circling and I'm highlighting it right there because I feel like this game's going to be won and lost in that very area. Now, another area that I'd like to look at here, Tennessee 125th out of 136 teams in college football in red zone defense. They've struggled in that area all year long. And for what needs to be, I think it's 93% of opponents are scoring in the red area. Flip that over, and Oklahoma's red zone offense is first in the country, and they've scored on 100% of their red zone opportunities this year. So much can be made about Oklahoma's offense, how they're underwhelming, how they're not as good as we thought they were going to be with Mateer, with Satania at wide receiver, but they're really good in the red zone. So Tennessee's key to the game, you got to step that red zone defense up. Got to do something about it. Keep Oklahoma to field goals. You can let them score, but let them score field goals. If this is a Oklahoma gets to the red area, falls apart, kicks a field goal type game, I like Tennessee in this spot. But if Tennessee's allowing Oklahoma to match them step for step, and Oklahoma doesn't turn the football over, doesn't give Tennessee extra possessions, this could be a down-to-the-wire contest, really. It could come down to the last drive, kind of like what we saw with Tennessee and Georgia or something like that. And I'm not saying both teams are going to score 40 points or 40-plus points, although that could happen. I don't see it happening. I think if this game turns into a track meet, I think that favors Tennessee, especially at home, especially with that offense, especially the fact that I think that Oklahoma has a tendency to give teams extra possessions. And I think this game in a track meet favors Tennessee. Like I said, Tennessee favored by 3.5. We can go over all the numbers we want. It comes down to my gut. My gut here is telling me Tennessee's going to win this football game. Tennessee's going to cover. Tennessee's favored by 3.5. I just think that Oklahoma, given their history of turning the football over, I see Tennessee capitalizing on that. And I don't think now Oklahoma could come in here and play a clean football game, not turn the ball over, and it could be a completely different scenario. And come Monday, I could be reviewing this football game. I could be eating crow, eating my words. Oklahoma fans laughing at me, pointing at me, Boomer Sooner, all that. But I'm thinking what I'm looking at here is I'm thinking a big Tennessee win at night, Heupel over his former team. I think Tennessee wins in this spot. And I think something's got to give with Oklahoma's defense. We haven't seen them really we saw the things that Ole Miss was able to do last week against Oklahoma. I think Tennessee's going to do those things just as good. I'm not saying Tennessee's a better offense than Ole Miss, but Tennessee does a lot of things well. And I think the film that Tennessee's been watching this week has been that Ole Miss game. Joey Aguilar is going to have to get the ball out really quick, negate that pass rush by getting the ball out quick. A lot of slants, a lot of screen game, a lot of things like that. Give your playmakers a chance to make plays in space against this Oklahoma defense that's very aggressive. That's why their numbers are the way they are. And I think given that, if Tennessee's able to do that, be efficient on third down, score in the red area, and get the ball out quick and negate this Oklahoma pass rush, I like Tennessee to win this football game, and I like Tennessee to win 31-24 in Knoxville for After the Whistles Game of the Week. And as always, we keep doing this. The first week we started was a $20 gift card. Nobody got the score right. Last week, Vanderbilt, Missouri, it was a $25 gift card. Nobody got it right. We're going to increase the amount to $30 for After the Whistle's Game of the Week this week. Drop your score prediction in the comments. I'm going to post the game. I'm going to make a post about it. I'm going to share it. Drop your score prediction in the comments, and you pick the score right, you will get a $30 gift card to the place of your choosing, whether you're like me and you're a big Chick-fil-A guy or gal, or you like Starbucks, you like coffee, whatever else. I will reach out to you if you get the score right. You tell me where you want your gift card to be to, and I will make it happen. And thanks again, y'all. Man, I'm telling you, big things coming from After the Whistle, big things coming down. Like I said, video soon, video show. In the meantime, be sure to go on YouTube, subscribe to the show, go on Spotify, give me a follow on there so you'll get the updates when I post the show. Apple Podcasts, leave a rating on all the shows. Look me up on socials, add me, everything else. In the meantime, y'all enjoy the football this weekend as always. Enjoy it with your friends, enjoy it with your family, grill something, have some cold beverages, whatever you do to enjoy game day. If you're in Jacksonville, shoot me a text, shoot me a message. Come find me. We'll talk ball, whatever else. And I will catch y'all on Monday as we review Week 10's action. Thank y'all for tuning in, and God bless.